Before the season even kicks off, soccer fans are already making predictions. Who wins the league? Who qualifies for Europe? And who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code CUP26 to get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI, Kalshi. Trade the beautiful game. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to How Are the Podcast. And as every day go by this week, we're getting back that feeling of excitement with a hint of nerves that comes before a big game for the lads. And this is only going to grow as we preview the game later this week. But today, we thought we'd take a little step back to view the big picture as we preview the 2026-27 season. We're going to look at how this year's Premier League is shaping up at the moment with a few days to go. And as we preview how Sunderland are looking as well ahead of the opening day. And then we can try and put into context for one or two predictions on how it might pan out. And we can only hope for the best that some rival pod doesn't clip it next summer because we were so wide of the mark. So joining me, and while they're looking into their crystal balls, and that's not a metaphor for anything before someone suggests it's for the bloopers pod. First up, we've got Gavin Henderson. Hello, Gav.
Hello, miss. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. It finally feels like the season is starting when we're getting into all this sort of prediction stuff and chatting ahead of games. It's an exciting time, isn't it, this week? I think we've obviously gone nowhere over the summer, and that means that we've had zero rest from football, but this still feels quite exciting. It's not. It feels like we've been away, even though we haven't. Do you know what I mean by that? Like yeah. The proper stuff's about to start now.
Yeah, and you know what? We had planned on doing loads on the World Cup, but in the end, we just kept talking about all the other stuff. I hardly did anything on the World Cup, did we?
Oh, that's it. I mean, and the problem with that is that we were seeing that much of Sunderland players through the tournament that it gave us no real break. But then I wanted to do stuff about the World Cup. It was difficult. It was like I wanted to stay up till 2 a.m. to watch Colombia play somebody and Ecuador play somebody and Ivory Coast play somebody. But unfortunately, I have a family life and kids and all these other things going on in my life and work, and I can't stay up till God knows when to watch games, unfortunately. So there we go. But yeah, I mean, the World Cup was good fun still, though, wasn't it? It just was a bit disappointing not be able to watch every game. It didn't feel like a proper World Cup in that sense.
Yeah. I didn't watch many. And anyway, we're having far too much fun doing unpopular opinions and Room 101s and all that sort of stuff. Because also joining us today, and I'm very glad to say, because it hasn't happened often enough this season, that the three of us have been able to record at the same time, because we have Martin Wunless with us. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Chris. Yeah, David Beckham was golden balls. I'm quite happy to be crystal balls if that's what we decide.
Can I just say, Chris, you said we haven't been able to get together very often this season. It hasn't even started yet, really.
Yes, well, we're in that strange point where we're still saying this season, last season, next season, and they all kind of mean the same thing at the minute. But yeah, Martin, it's been I don't know, has it been a long summer or not? I'm trying to decide. It seems in some ways it's whizzed by, and in some ways I've just been kind of waiting for something to get going.
It's been a funny one, and the World Cup was on at really good times for me generally. So I got to watch a lot of it. I watched the majority of the games, if not the vast majority of them. So it's not as if I've been neglecting watching football or been desperate to watch anything else. But there's nothing like watching Sunderland play. There's nothing like watching us play in a competitive game. And even the pre-season friendlies are nice to watch because you get to see the players again, you get to see them in new kits and all that sort of stuff. It's only until the last one or two pre-season friendlies that you get the sense that it's kind of serious now. and we are really preparing for the new season. So the last couple of games have been nice to see, and I just can't wait for the season to get going again. And hopefully we're not regretting saying that in a few weeks' time. We go, oh God, can we just go back to pre-season when we weren't losing points or whatever? But I'm actually worryingly optimistic about what might unfold over the next 9 months. So we will, we'll have to see, won't we? But no, look, it's a one time, isn't it, that most football fans have absolutely boundless optimism. And we generally find out after 90 minutes whether that's misplaced or not, but we'll see where we get to, won't we?
Well, it's not just after 90 minutes. Can you remember, I think it was an old Danny Baker's Fabulous World of Freak Football, where he said this game started and Danny Baker was talking over it, and he said, you wait all summer, the anticipation of the new season started, and then he basically stopped. He'd been talking for 6 seconds, and this game for opening day of the season before someone had scored. Anyway, that's it. Season over. 6 weeks, 6 seconds in.
Oh, that's exactly right. Like the one that sticks out in my mind all the time is when we came up under McCarthy and we played Charlton at home. And to be fair, Charlton were a decent side at the time, but we got turned over with 10 men. They had 10 men for most of the game. And Darren Ambrose got sent off. And you just go, this is going to be a long, hard, bloody season, this. And it was. Anyway,
I can remember on that game. I can remember being really optimistic about. It's not like me, of course, but I can remember being really optimistic ahead of that. Thinking, we've got a really good chance of getting a good start to the season here, and we went 1-0 up, didn't we? I think.
I went 1-0 down and then we equalised.
Andy Gray scored.
Darren Bent scored relatively early on, and we'd been trying to get him, and he turned us down to go to Charlton because he'd been at Ipswich the previous year. And as soon as that happened, we'd got John Stead instead of him, and Andy Gray. Andy Gray ended up equalising with a tap-in from about half a centimetre, which was the highlight of the Sunderland career. But there we go.
Bloody hell. Reminders of those players remind me why you were so optimistic about that season, Gav. Signing those two.
What a team.
And actually, if anyone hasn't listened to it, Martin, I think with Andrew and Kelvin, did an opening day podcast to look back at some opening day games. So if you haven't listened to that, and talking about being optimistic, I remember Terry Butcher spending loads of money in 1993 and getting spanked at the baseball ground 5-0. Again, season over.
Terry Butcher, or Mick Butcher, as Andrew called him, which is a amalgamation of two things you probably don't want to be joined together. But there you go.
Yes, what a manager that makes. But anyway, let's cover last season before we get into this season. I think that's the right terminology. We'll start with you, Gav. Let's try and sum up last season. And of course, look, we all know it was a fantastic season for Sunderland, but just generally across the Premier League, what did you make of it? Because there was a lot said about Arsenal winning the title and the way they won the title, basically through set pieces certainly for the first half of the season. Manchester City had a slight off season. Liverpool were nowhere. Manchester United were in the bottom half until Carrick took over. Spurs obviously going close to the brink and getting relegated. Forest, Palace, just above them in 15th and 16th, potentially a surprise. Leeds probably doing better than most predictions, but I think across the board it was a really odd year for the Premier League, and even the football played and the styles that were on show, it seemed a bit of a turning point from the seasons that came before.
Yeah, I think so, and I think we read the room in that regard, and you'll be able to remember back to when we got promoted. We played virtually the same way to get promoted as we did when we then came into the Premier League. So there wasn't like some massive transition in terms of our playing style. We were wedded to a style of play that had actually been quite successful for us. And you don't tend to see that with promoted clubs that, for instance, Coventry last season were very attacking. It's going to be tough to do that in the Premier League, so they might have to alter the way they play. Well, we didn't have to do that. And I think that was kind of the way it was right the way through the Premier League, because, as you mentioned, Arsenal got promoted. Well, didn't get promoted. They won the league. Playing
the new Super League.
Arsenal won the league playing quite a pragmatic style of football where they got criticised for it all season. And I was always on the side of, I couldn't care less how my team play as long as we win. I want my team to play to win. I hate Like my idea of hell is somebody like Russell Martin becoming Sunderland manager, because I don't want somebody like that to come into the football club and say, this is how we play football. Whether we win or lose, it's the right way to do it. The right way to play football is to win games, and Arsenal did that better than anybody last year, and that's why they won the league. And I think it's going to be interesting going into the new season to see whether that carries on, because teams will have looked at us, because we were by far, in my opinion, the most overachieving team in the league. And other clubs are going to be looking at the likes of Sunderland saying, why did they have so much success? They're going to be looking at Arsenal. They're going to be maybe looking at Liverpool and going, why did they struggle? And why did Manchester City not quite have enough to get over the line? And that's all going to contribute to how teams kind of form up this season. So, and last season was an interesting season for the Premier League, because I think you saw in European competition, I know it sounds daft because Arsenal did get to the final of the Champions League, but you saw in European competition for a lot of the teams how when they came up against really strong top level opposition, they didn't have it. They weren't able to cope. And across Europe, that sort of more pragmatic style hasn't really bled into the game. So yeah, I think last season from the Premier League's perspective was it was really interesting. But when you see the likes of Tottenham struggling, that's not going to happen again. I think Chelsea actually are going to have a good season this season. And they had an indifferent season last time out. I think some of the teams who overachieved, and I'm not including us in this, by the way, I think they maybe will struggle this time around. So, but look, every year there's different surprises sprung up. I mean, 2 years ago you had Man U and Tottenham occupying the two places above the bottom three. Like, so every year there's something mad happens, and what's to say it's not going to happen again?
Yeah. I mean, Martin, Gav's just said there that, every year throws up surprises. But I think, considering how the Premier League went the years before that, where, the promoted sides went down, pretty obvious which two were in the title race, and then that played out. I think 1 year, Europe was pretty much sorted with a couple of weeks to go as well, in those years that came before. I mean, looking at the last year's league, I mean, you're talking, between us and if you go down to Leeds in 14th, 7 points separating between 7th and 14th. It was a tight Premier League. Do you think last season went towards maybe, kind of blowing up that old guard? But Gav saying he thinks Chelsea and Spurs will be back in there. Do you think last season kind of broke things up a little bit?
I think it was a really good reset for the Premier League and English football in general, because we were running the real risk in this country of having the Premier League as a closed shop of 17 clubs and 3 clubs coming up, same 3 clubs going down. And I actually genuinely think if us and Leeds hadn't done what we did last season and approached the season as we did approach it, I think it's really hard if the 3 promoted clubs that season had gone back down, because you just end up getting a 17 that's stronger and stronger and stronger, and that gap becoming wider. So what I'm saying is everybody in football should be really thankful for Sunderland and for Leeds for doing what they did last season, because I think it's actually helped massively. It's helped the clubs who were going to come up this or have come up this season, and we've seen different approaches, especially from Ipswich. I was looking through all of the signings and things that people have made during the summer, and you look at Ipswich's business, and it's been, I think they've tried to do what we did to some extent. There's differences, but I think they've been the one who've gone, you know what, we came up with this team 2 years ago, it went back down. This team isn't going to survive if we don't invest. So they've made some impressive signings, and some signings that it's probably similar to what we made last season, when people on the outside look and go, never heard of that player before, not too sure about that, but they've got significant potential. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how competitive those 3 clubs are, because when you look at the clubs who went down last season and they're likely to come back up this season, next season's Premier League is potentially going to be exceptionally hard. So it's going to be a massive season this season. And like, you look at the league table from last season. I'm sure the three of us can pinpoint games where we should have got more points out of, where we took a goal away or didn't do what we should have done and passed up an opportunity to get 3 points, which could have got us an even higher position. But the reality is, you've got 13 points between 7th and 17th. 4 wins and a draw across the season. It's not much, is it? So that middle pack of the Premier League was really tight. We probably finished with, even though I've kind of said we could have got points, and every team will look at games where they've dropped points that they should have maybe gotten, would have thought they would have got. We could very easily have ended the season finishing 10th, 11th, 12th. And how does that change your perception going into this season compared to finishing 7th? I think finishing 7th, even though we all sat through every minute of every game and we know what happened, what transpired, and the reasons why, all that sort of stuff. And you are where you are at the end of the season. I know it's a cliche, but we finished 7th because we were the 7th best side at the end of the season. It's just that thing where your perception of what success looks like this season is inflated because of that. If we finish 13th, where does your perception of success lie for this season? So I think it's going to be fascinating how, as a fan base, we view what success is going to look like this season.
Yeah, we'll definitely come back on expectations before we're out. But just very quickly, Martin, in a couple of sentences, if you can, because I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I did this with Gav the other day. You mentioned the Championship. Do you want to pick a couple of clubs who's going to come up this season from the Championship? I know that, being 8th, going down to 8th in the playoffs with another couple of sides, basically anybody can have a sniff out of the playoffs. But if you pick the top 2 out.
I think you'd be hard pressed to put any money on anybody apart from West Ham winning the league and Wolves probably coming up second. I think those are the 2 that will be right up there. I would not be surprised if Burnley are up there as well. I think they'll be right up there. My wild card, which everybody will hate, would be Wrexham.
Right. Well, you see, Gav picked those 2 sides. He went Wolves and not West Brom, West Ham, even the other one. And my wild card was Millwall, actually, to go up. So
I tell you what, I would love.
Did I give a wild card?
Blackburn.
I'm not sure you did, actually. Have you got one? I think you mentioned all the other Championship clubs just in case.
I mean, I don't know if this is a wild card because they've got one of the biggest budgets, but Birmingham, I think they'll be in the mix for the playoffs. Just because I think this year in the Championship, it's going to be a lot about who's got the biggest budgets, the biggest wage bills, the most expensive squads, because there's such a disparity at the top. And as we mentioned the last time we talked about this, with the playoffs going down to 8th, like a Birmingham or a Wrexham could quite easily win the playoffs. So yeah, I think there's a high chance of that.
I tell you the one I would love to see, Blackburn. Tony Mowbray back in charge.
Mowbray.
There's talk about Patrick Roberts going there from Birmingham.
Yeah.
Like that would be, if you're going to write it, you'd have them coming up, wouldn't you? Because I think that would be fantastic for Mowbray.
Yeah, good result on Friday night, wasn't it? 2-0. I think it was at Wolves, wasn't it? So that
should have beat them. It went a last minute penalty, wasn't it, from Wolves to get the equaliser?
Yeah, good result for them. Just going back to the Premier League, Gav. We were talking about that change last season. Do you think the way the Premier League went and the fact that it kind of shook things up a little bit, do you think that's been one of the main drivers behind this sudden influx of everyone having a changed manager? Because the stats are ridiculous. I think it's 9 out of the 20 clubs have new managers. If you then add the 2 in terms of Michael Carrick and De Zerbi, who weren't in charge of their clubs at the beginning of last season, you've got almost 11 who are starting a new season. Ipswich are the first club since Hull City in 2016-17 to come up to the Premier League and have a different manager than the one that got them promoted. So you've got this whole list, and you look at the how long has the manager's been in charge. Regis Labris has had 2 full seasons with us, and he's 4th in the list of being the longest in charge of their club. I mean, you've got De Zerbi, who's 10th, and he came in to save Spurs at the end of the day, and all this sort of stuff. So it's all a bit strange. But do you think the way the Premier League went played a part in that?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of clubs decided they needed a reset, and that I think with a lot of managers, they'd reached the natural point of moving on. I mean, Iraola at Bournemouth, for instance, had overseen a brilliant job there, developed some excellent players who Bournemouth being a small club have to sell players every year to ensure that they're competitive. And they've done like their recruitment and everything's been brilliant, and they've managed to turn over so many fantastic players at that club. But he felt like it was a natural end for him to move on, and rather than somebody buy him out of his deal, he just left at the end of his contract and has gone to Liverpool. Likewise, Glasner at Palace, I think from sort of the midway point of the season, it was pretty clear he was leaving them, and still they managed to have a decent end of the season and stuff. And the only surprise with him was he went to Forest. I was expecting him to get a top job, and that's no disrespect to Forest, but having won so many trophies in the last 5 years as a manager at different clubs, Forest is the next step. Bit of a strange one. Maybe that tells us something about their ambitions going forward. Maybe they're going to really kick on and go for it. I don't know, but
He must be on a decent contract. That's all I can say.
Aye, well, that owner is famously ambitious, though, isn't he? I know he's a bit mental, but he's
One word for it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've spoken to Matt from Forest Focus about him before, and he was telling us like he gets away with it because he's so passionate about improving Nottingham Forest, and he's put a lot of money into that football club. He's an owner who backs his managers, even if they do end up getting sacked after a couple of months. He likes to give them the money and the players that they need to do a good job. So there's been a lot of turnover, but a lot of managers have kind of swapped around various clubs, haven't they? Marco Silva had been at Fulham for quite a few years. Again, someone else who'd reached probably a natural point where he could move on. Chelsea, being Chelsea, they're always at risk of changing managers. Guardiola, the end of an era there where he'd been there, 10 years? And I think with a lot of now I'm thinking about it, a lot of these managers I'm mentioning probably could and should have left a little bit earlier, actually. So again, it makes this new Premier League season so interesting because for us, I think Martin said, everybody gets a bit carried away with their clubs before a ball's kicked on. Everyone's really optimistic and hopeful for the season ahead. And we're the same, include us in that. But one thing you can say without with a degree of certainty is that not everything's going to work out for every club. So whilst you might look at Forest and you might look at Palace, you might look at Newcastle and Man United and whatever else and have a judgment on how their season's going to go, for 4, 5, 6 of those clubs, it's not going to go right. And I just think it's probably the most interesting Premier League season in a long time for that reason, because so much is up in the air. And for somebody like Arteta at Arsenal, it just strengthens his hand, I think, because he's just managed to do what he set out to do 5, 6 years ago with Arsenal and won a Premier League. And you saw that in the Community Shield the other day. They just looked streets ahead of Man City, and they weren't, 5, 6 months ago, they weren't streets ahead. So that all of this change going on is probably going to strengthen the couple of clubs who've got a bit of stability. And I'm hoping that includes us. We haven't had massive turnover in playing squad. We haven't changed our manager. Labris is into his 3rd season now. So I think and I hope for our sake that the stable clubs, this actually benefits them as opposed to, not benefiting us.
Yeah. Arteta, we are out in front on just short of 7 years he's been in charge of Arsenal. And all throughout that, Gav, it was like the Simpsons meme, where they're waiting for him to say it. I was waiting for you to say Eddie Howe and the Mags, and you didn't say it. You didn't mention them yet, but I'm sure they'll get mentioned.
I said Newcastle, but I wasn't very specific about them.
But Martin, actually, just playing into all that, what Gav's just said about the new managers, and I talked about those stats. And maybe that's come from the seasons you were talking about where, it was getting, you just saw the blueprint of the promoted sides going down, I think 3 seasons. and the same sides at the top doing their thing in the Champions League. And it seems like everyone just got a bit comfortable. And then it led to last season. And it just feels now at the start of this season with everybody trying to start again and almost panicking a little bit. It's like the Premier League's been shook up a bit like a globe, like a snow globe in some ways. That you don't know how things are going to land. I just feel like we've never had a Premier League like it. And I just feel like it's a massive opportunity for a lot of clubs this season.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of Premier League clubs who are, probably typically around that 6th to 17th place probably got quite complacent over the previous few seasons. They probably thought, you know what, as long as we turn up, we're going to stay up. We'll be fine. We'll get the money in. We'll cash the chips in and see where we go to. And all of a sudden, the world's been turned upside down. If you look at it, and I think it's a really, really hard table to predict. If you were going to go through, I think, you can make a really strong case for Arsenal winning the league. As Gav said, Arteta's hand's been strengthened by the change everywhere else. But outside of that, and the way it looks, it'd probably be completely different. Somebody else will win the league. Outside of that, I think you can talk about every single position, every club, and you ask 100 people, and there might be 10 or 12 places discrepancy in between where people think they'll finish. I think there's that much, there's that many unknowns going into the season, and you have to hope that having the continuity that we've had, and I'll chuck Leeds into there because Leeds will probably be saying the same sorts of things. Wouldn't have come up with Farker. They've done well last season. I think they've made some good signings this season. They haven't lost anybody of note, and they'll probably be looking at the season with higher aspirations than they finished the last one. So I think it's such an interesting season. I think it's a really dangerous season because I think any club out of maybe 17 could find themselves dragged into the relegation zone. And it's going to be quite a season full of jeopardy, I think.
Yeah.
Well, look, can I just add on that quickly? Sorry, Chris, because we're talking about stability and stuff. And for me, the most unstable club in the Premier League are Chelsea. Just.
I thought you were setting it up. I thought you were setting it up there.
Yeah, but they don't have Europe this year, and they've spent a lot of money. And actually, I think they've recruited quite well for once. So, that's going to be important as well. You've got big clubs who didn't get European football, who it gives them a little bit more flexibility in terms of what they target this year. Chelsea aren't traveling all over the place. They've just got the Premier League and the domestic cups to look at. So they naturally will probably look to challenge Arsenal. Whether they're good enough, I don't think so. But I think that whole mix of who's going to be in the top 4 is totally up for grabs now.
Yeah, well, I bet you're gutted because now that they'll get a mix on flights, they'll get a mix of OAP tickets and junior tickets because half their squad's like 19, 20, and then you've got Jordan Henderson and Danny Welbeck, of course.
Chelsea pensioners, eh?
Yeah, that's it. Well, look, let's get into a few predictions, gents, because that's what everyone's been waiting for you two to fall flat in your face. We'll start off with the top 4. And I'm going to come to you first, Gav. What do you think this season's top 4 is going to end up looking like?
Sunderland win the league. Maybe no. Arsenal win the league again. Arsenal, I think, will win the league again. I just don't. I don't see anybody else being as good as. I think they've had such a brilliant season and have surprised a lot of people because I think maybe not surprised, but a lot of people didn't like the way they played, as I mentioned before last season, and I don't think there's going to be let up in that. And I think they're very difficult to beat. And they've also made some good signings, and they've had a little bit of turnover in the squad, not too much. They've just got rid of a few players who maybe need to go and leave in place in first team football, and then have recruited quite well. It pains us to say it, but I think Bruno Guimaraes will be a good signing for them. It doesn't pain us to say because I'm glad he's left Newcastle. It's absolutely destroyed them, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, is it funnier when it goes like Isak or not? When he goes for loads of money and then falls flat in his face, or would you prefer him to
No,
do well?
because that gave the Mags like a bit of a pep in their step about Isak, didn't it? Where So yeah, I think Arsenal top. I think Chelsea will finish second for the reasons I said before. I think I actually rate the signings of Welbeck and Henderson, not necessarily as starters every week, but the one thing I would say about Chelsea over the last 3 or 4 years is they've exclusively signed really talented younger players and not had the leadership and experience in the squad to sort of mold and shape the mentality of that group. In the same, you can see why they wanted to sign Granit Xhaka, because that's exactly the kind of thing he would have offered that dressing room. I think they've been really important signings, and I think Chelsea have recruited really well this year. So I'm going to say they'll go in at second. I think Liverpool will be stronger this year. I think Iraola's a really smart appointment. I think Slot basically got Jurgen Klopp's team to win the league, and he was found out last season the football was terrible. If Iraola can do what he did at Bournemouth and get Liverpool playing really good attacking football with what is a good squad, a really solid squad, a fit Alexander Isak will get you 15 to 20 goals if he's playing every week, because he's shown it in the past already. And I think it's a good year. It's a good year for him. Fresh start, new manager and all that. Wirtz can only get better, you would imagine, after having a pretty indifferent season last time out. So yeah, I'm going with Liverpool in third.
Was that on D Ream's second album, was it?
And then fourth place, I'm going Man United. I genuinely think Man City are going to finish outside the top 4 this season. I've got a bit of a shock watching them in the Community Shield. I think they've lost in Silva and Rodri. That's massive. You've just lost 2 of the best midfielders in the world with so much experience. And Rodri literally 2-3 years ago was the best player walking the planet, and he's just won the World Cup with Spain and showed why he's still one of the best in the world in that position. He's gone to Barcelona, or is going to Barcelona as we record this. Bernardo Silva's gone. Elliot Anderson's a good signing, but he's not Rodri, and he's not going to be Rodri for a couple of years yet, at least. So I fancy them to finish outside the top 4. So that would be my top 4 anyways. I'm going Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United.
Ooh, interesting stuff. Martin, what's your top 4?
Well, sounds going to sound like a Morecambe and Wise sketch where it's all the same notes, but just in a different order. Because I agree with Gav about City. And this might come back to bite both of us. I just don't see Maresca doing a great deal there. I just don't think he's the right replacement for Guardiola. And I think
who is though? Can you imagine trying to replace Pep Guardiola? You're bang on, Martin. Like who is the right man to do that?
Well, it's really difficult, isn't it? And as we saw, you mentioned Slot taking over from Klopp, and we've seen countless people try to take over from Alex Ferguson. It's really hard. It's a really unenviable job. Take over a manager who's had repeated and sustained success over a long period of time, because you can't, like, what can you do? You can't rip up that team, but you want to try to put your own stamp on it. And look, the fact that he was there with Guardiola at a point before he went to Leicester might help him out a bit. That might stand him in some good stead. They might as well have said Pep Guardiola's staying and just put Maresca in, because most people wouldn't have noticed, would they? They look pretty similar, so there is that. But Arsenal, I think, will be top. I just don't see a way that they don't win the league this season. In second, I've chucked Manchester United. So I actually think Michael Carrick did a really, really good job there. And I've been reading some stuff about how he's sort of tackled pre-season, some of the conversations he's had with different players in pre-season, some of the standards he's been setting. And look, he knows what it takes to win at Manchester United. He's been part of that successful team under Ferguson, hasn't he? And even though I don't think he's the best manager, this sounds daft, even though I don't think he's the best manager, like we saw at Borough, what his strengths and his limitations are. But sometimes people suit clubs, and you get something that kind of transcends tactics and all that sort of stuff. You just got that right fit. And I've got a feeling he's the best fit Manchester United have had since Ferguson left. So I've plumped for them in second place. Chelsea, I think, will be third. I think they've got a good squad. I think they'll get stronger over the next couple of weeks as well. But the fact that they've made Alonso manager rather than head coach, and Alonso's got a good track record as a manager, a great track record as a manager. I think he's somebody who will finally get the respect of the Chelsea players. And we read all sorts, didn't we, last year about, the disharmony behind the scenes with Chelsea and the disruption that players were causing. I think Alonso's got the stature that group of players, or a group of players like that, needs. And the fact he's being made manager rather than head coach, I think, speaks volumes about how the club are looking at that position. So I think he could do a really good job there. And the fact that they haven't got any other competitions, they can just focus on the league, probably keeps that quite strong and strengthens that hand. Fourth, I would say Liverpool. I think the new fellow will do a decent job there. If I can have a fifth, which I know you said top four, but I'm gonna chuck Spurs in.
So you think they're going to finish fifth, or probably a Champions League place?
I reckon Spurs will have a really strong season. I think De Zerbi is an excellent manager. I think they're recruited really, really well. And I've just got a feeling that he will put a rocket under them and they will go great guns this season. So there's me fifth as well, if you want a fifth.
They're sort of in the same bracket as Chelsea because they don't have European football either. So they're both, and I think Spurs have had a bit of a shock to the system with the 2 seasons they've had. I mean, they have made some good signings over the summer. You've got to be fair to them. I think Tonali will do well there. I think he's probably the kind of midfield player that we're missing last season. And with Spurs as well, they already had this is the daft thing. They already had a decent team. It was just rudderless, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We've seen this so many times in the Premier League. I think they've got to have learned from because the last 2 years have been horrendous there. I think Van Hecker's a great signing, by the way. I think talking about bringing leadership into teams, Robertson from Liverpool, free transfer, really, really smart signing. Matheus Fernandes from West Ham. He was probably their standout player other than Bowen last season. I know they've paid a lot of money for him, but he's another one who you've got. He's a little bit better than a relegated team, and I can see him kicking on. So yeah, good shout. I had completely forgot about Spurs, if I'm honest, but they're going to be in the mix, I think.
Yeah, and just to reiterate what Gav is saying, is about Liverpool, Chelsea and Spurs being in Europe. Being in Europe's not a burden, Gav, is it? Which we'll come on to when we get on to Sunderland after the break.
Well, before you, no, I've got to get this in because you said that. I think it doesn't have to be a burden, but if you're a team who's got the expectations of challenging for league titles, it can be. So that's why I think it will help them.
But the other point to that, and I think that will help both of them. The primary reason for that is because it gives the new managers more time in the training field.
That's it.
And I think that's massive when a new manager comes in to have that time to get his system over to work on things. We're in the fortunate position where the players are so well drilled that they know what jobs are expected of them. And we haven't had sort of seismic turnover of squad this summer. So there's caveats to everything, Christopher.
Yes, but we will come on to this because right now we need to take a quick break. So we'll be back very soon.
Before the season even kicks off, soccer fans are already making predictions. Who wins the league? Who qualifies for Europe? And who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code CUP26 to get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI, Kalshi. Trade the beautiful game. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory.
And welcome back to Highway the podcast. And the lads have just been talking about their top four. Just before we get into Sunderland, because I do want to get onto that, but very quickly, gents, the relegated clubs will go who's going to go down the bottom three. Gav, because I'm assuming you haven't got Sunderland in the top four or the bottom three, so we can cover Sunderland separately. So who's your three to go down?
Oh, you know what it is? It's tough at the minute because I think Ipswich, if they get the players over the line that it looks like they want to get over the line, they're giving themselves a decent chance. I think, I've seen them linked with Breel and Bolo. I think he'd be a decent signing. Give them a bit of physicality up top. If you can keep him fit, he's a good striker. The centre mid from Bayer Leverkusen, whose name's completely escaped me, looks like the level of signing you would expect a mid-table team to make. So, he could be a good signing for them. And they've already done a little bit of decent business. So of the three promoted teams, Ipswich at the minute probably have the best chance. But I'm not going to write any of them off because that would be foolish. Everyone done that to us last year. And it was just used as fuel to keep us going. But I just, at the minute, as I sit here recording this, I think Coventry go down, unfortunately for them, even though they spent a bit of money. I think Hull, I saw their last team, the last starting 11 of pre-season, and it isn't Premier League quality. And they're going to have to do a hell of a lot of business between now and the end of the window to improve that side. So Hull, and as an outsider, and a bit of a different point of difference maybe, but Fulham. I think Fulham are going to struggle this year.
Yeah.
I think losing Harry Wilson's going to be a big blow to them. Manager who's been there for a long time has left, and I'm not convinced Arbeloa he hasn't done enough to show he's anything really. And I just wonder whether Fulham might struggle this year. Aging team as well, got quite a lot of older players, so they're me three. But I mean, the boring answer would be all three promoted teams going back down, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Martin, do you agree? Is it going to be one of those seasons?
You know what? I actually had exactly the same three as Gav said written down. But
You've been checking over my shoulder.
Copying your homework. There's a few others to chuck into the mix, isn't there? And look, I think I'm going to preface this with, we experienced it last year, didn't we? Where everybody said we were going to go straight back down. Even scan now transfer business straight back down. And we had confidence because we knew what was going on behind the scenes, knew what was going on with Labris. We'd seen how we were set up the season before. And as Gav touched upon at the outset of this podcast, we played in a style that was really translatable to the Premier League. We didn't just go and try to score a ton of goals and blast everybody out of the way. We were pragmatic. We were well organised. We were very tactical in our approach. We played against the other team's strengths and weaknesses, and that sometimes changed week to week based on who we were playing. And I think that's in good stead. But people looking at it from the outside didn't see that. Weren't aware of the work that Labris has done. So I'm cautious about saying any or making sweeping judgments about any of the newly promoted sides because, I want some of them to stay up. I would like some of them to stay up because I think it's healthy. However, looking at Hull's transfer business so far and the way that they played last season and where they finished last season, I would say they're going to be in for a hell of a struggle. I do think when you look at the transfer business of Coventry and Ipswich have had a much stronger window so far. Coventry have made a couple of good signings, but I think they are going to be heavily reliant on a lot of the people who took them up. And I'm not convinced the style of play that they have and the way that Lampard had them playing last season will translate as easily to the Premier League. It's going to be harder for them to score goals and it's going to be harder for them to keep them out. So I do think they could struggle, but again, everyone said that about us last season and they were wrong. So I could well be wrong with that. There's a few teams that you look at and go, they are relatively established in the Premier League and could struggle. Gav touched upon one, and Jimenez is another player who was left Fulham, who scored a lot of goals from last season. And they haven't really replaced him with anything of any note. I know they got a lad in from Real Madrid, haven't they? But really unproven at Premier League level. The job that Marco Silva had done with Fulham over a number of seasons, I think kind of went under the radar a bit. So I think he had them really overachieving and really doing well. So I think that combined with the loss of Harry Wilson as well and Jimenez, that could see them have a little bit of a struggle. And then you look at the managers the clubs who've changed manager. Forest, I know Glasner did very well at Palace, but is he going to succeed there? Their transfer business hasn't been spectacular, and they've lost Anderson. So that's going to be a big thing for them to go and overcome. And they, how many managers they have? Last season, 3 or 4. They had 4, didn't they, I think? So,
something like that, yeah.
Well, because it started off with Nuno, then Postecoglou went in, Sean Dyche went in,
And then Pereira.
and then the other chap who was at Wolves went in, didn't he? So,
yeah, Pereira, yeah.
Yeah, and he actually had them playing really well. So you kind of wonder how that impacts everything and the patience at boardroom level. If Glasner doesn't get to a good start, what's going to happen there?
But based on that, if you're Glasner, you put in your contract, if I get sacked, you give us basically 50 million quid or something like that. Yeah.
You assume that
watertight.
Would be a pretty good contract. Obviously, our friends up the road aren't looking too fantastic in pre-season, are they? And that's, again, massive unknown, isn't it? How their new manager takes to the Premier League, how he takes to the club, how the new players that they brought in take to the Premier League and the club, how much patience those young players get from the crowd. Because, if a lot of players there don't hit the ground running and the results don't come, it could be a little bit of trouble. So that's going to be one to watch. The surprise one for me sorry, Gav, go on.
Sorry, just while we're mentioning Newcastle, and it's something we haven't really said about any other club yet, I think they've had the biggest losses of any club in the league over the summer by a mile. Lost far too much quality and leadership, lost a long-standing manager who, I think, let's be honest, for a long time was overachieving there. I mean, to get them a trophy and into the Champions League twice with... They did spend a lot of money, but some of those players who featured heavily, when you look at Dan Burn and Murphy and Shaw, they're not Nick Pope. They're not top players. So I think, that's when you weigh everything up at Newcastle, they've probably suffered more than anybody over the summer. So you have the right to be in the conversation.
They have. And what probably stands them in good stead at the minute is that they've recouped a lot of money. So they've still probably got a bit of a hand to play in the transfer window. So, we're obviously talking before the season starts and the window is still open for a few weeks. So that could all change. But I think there's so much could go wrong quickly there. And, I was just reading earlier that there's rumours that they're trying to sell the club, trying to move the club on because of certain things that are going on. So whether the ownership there is fully committed to the club and is actually doing the things that they wanted them to do is another matter. But that all adds to the uncertainty that is kind of surrounding them at the minute. So it's a massive unknown, and who knows how that one will turn out. The other club I would chuck in, I think were pretty poor for a lot of last season and haven't really done much in the transfer market and have a manager who I would love to see get relegated is Everton. Now, I really, really like Everton as a club. They're one of my favourite other Premier League clubs. But I would love to see them get relegated if Moyes is manager because he just deserves to get relegated. And I just don't see the business that they've done so far being too good. They haven't really done a great deal. And I think that the lad George who they had on loan for the second half of last season and made him permanent. And they've done the swap with Brendan Johnson for Dwight McNeil. But they haven't really strengthened the side too much. And, we saw when we went down to Goodison Park, when we went down to Hill Dickinson towards the end of last season, even the mood around the place doesn't seem great. Don't seem to be really, really buoyant. And Everton's a really tough place to go to when they are really buoyant. I think Goodison Park played into that a lot. So if they struggle at the Hill Dickinson Stadium, it's going to be interesting how that home advantage dissipates a little bit.
Just on Everton as well, they had Jack Grealish last season, and that's a lot of quality out of the team. And I think there's rumours and Dye's wanted by other clubs. So that's one to keep an eye on between now and the end of the window. He's their best player. So if they lose him, you could be right.
Yeah, I'd like to think it, and it all makes sense, Martin. But for some reason, David Moyes and Everton just means mid-table. And I don't know why. He just locks them in mid-table. Whatever squad he's got, it just seems to happen. But anyway, because the lads have thoroughly explained their predictions, we're going to have to squeeze in a little bit about Sunderland's chances this season in this podcast. Gav, look, we've been here before. If I go back to the Peter Reid era, we finished 7th. We seem to be doing things differently. But, you know, just back then, we were trying to establish ourselves. How much of this season is a massive crossroads for Sunderland in terms of, you know, at least establishing ourselves, you know, for a second season? I mean, you know, is this where, you know, we see the direction of the club for maybe the next 5, maybe even 10 years?
Yeah, I think because we obviously see ourselves as a football club who we think can compete in Europe more than just once. We want to do it, you know, every year if we can. I think we've got really ambitious people behind the scenes who want to win something, and that's probably been reflected in the business we've done, in the business we haven't done, because whilst a lot of people have panicked and said they want this, that, and the other, the club have took the time and we haven't made any silly decisions in the transfer market. We've managed to hang on to key players. I think had we not qualified for the Europa League, we might have lost a few more, and that's a reflection of how good the squad is. So if we want to keep these good players and we want to keep achieving things, we've got to match their ambition. And luckily, I think we've got people there who realise this. I mean, we haven't got people who've got that Sunderland stink on them, have we really? You know, Gisolfi and Lebris and Chaka, they've came to the club and they've went, well, why can't we achieve something here? Why not? Where the rest of us were thinking, oh, well, you know, a lot of people were thinking, oh, you know, Sunderland will struggle and same old Sunderland are going to do this, that, and the other. They weren't affected by that at all because they just didn't have that on them. So I think this is a really big season because if we manage to do very well in a cup and we have another strong league finish, could well set us up for a really healthy sort of 5 to 10 years. And this feels like the start to me. I know for a lot of people it'll feel like a defining point, and Sunderland have finally reached the point where I've always wanted to see them as a fan. I feel like this is just the beginning, and that means I hope it means we'll have a really strong season again. Whether that means we finish 7th, I don't know. I think we'll be in the mix to finish in those European places again. I think we'll attack the cup competitions stronger than we did last year because we all know, and it was repeated over and over last season, the ambition was hit 40 points, then think about what comes next. So the League Cup, the FA Cup probably were affected by that because our main aim was to just stay up effectively. And then once we did that, we could look on. So I think this is going to be a really ambitious year for the club. I'd be amazed if we get to the League Cup 4th round and things like that, and we're not going, bloody hell, we're taking this seriously. I genuinely think Gisolfi, Lebris, Kirill, Xhaka, they want to win something. And why not? I think I said this on a pod the other day, but clubs smaller than us have won trophies in recent years. So why can't Sunderland do it? Let's have a bit of ambition, and I think hopefully by the end of the transfer window we'll see that matched in the business we've done. I think Met Ali is a really good signing. You know, people in France are talking about him being the next long-term France left back. We've pursued that one till we've got him, and I think that's been a real sign of where our ambition is. What are we saying to these players when what are we saying to Granit Xhaka when we're telling them don't go to Chelsea? You know what I mean? So really optimistic for what's to come for us. I am. But would you expect anything less from me, Chris?
Well, absolutely. I was thinking back to that FA Cup run last season, like you said there, and I actually do think at times if we'd drawn Premier League clubs all the way through instead of drawn Port Vale, we might have actually got all the way through for some bizarre reason. But Martin, do you think this season's got that significance in terms of it being a crossroads, and that what Gav was talking about there, where it could lead on to that new era if we keep establishing ourselves? And the other thing to add to that, Martin, do you think we're better prepared after having that first season, or do you think it adds a little bit more pressure? Because the impact of that first season could go either way on that front, couldn't it?
Are we better prepared? I think we'll be equally as well prepared given what the hand that we've had to play. So by that, I mean, last summer we had all these players who come in and Lebris had to prepare them tactically, how we want them to get them to learn the rules, all that sort of stuff. And he did so marvelously well in a really short space of time. And we were able to hit the ground running when the first game of the season came around. We haven't had that influx of players this summer, have we? We've only obviously had one or two come in so far. And we haven't got a need to chuck a load of players in. I actually don't think any new signings will get a start, maybe until after the international break. I think they'll actually wait and bed them in unless there's an injury that requires it. So I think we'll be in a position where we've got a really settled team. Everyone knows what they are required to do. Everyone knows what each other should be doing. And really importantly, everybody's got a year more experience in the Premier League. You know, we had so many players, didn't we, that came in without Premier League experience, without experience of playing in English football, certainly without experience of playing for Sunderland. And they did exceptionally well. Now they've got that experience. So the Noah Siddiqui of August 2026 is a far better player than Noah Siddiqui of August 2025. I think you can apply that logic to a number of people, including Enzo Lefebvre, who, you know, as we talked about the other day with Phil Smith, he started the season on the bench, couldn't get into the first team. And now he's probably the first name on the team sheet if Lebris is putting his team out in his preferred position. So you've got all of these dynamics to kind of chuck into the mix. The thing that I am keen to see us do in terms of improvement on last season is goal scoring. Because we had, the third or fourth lowest number of goals scored in the Premier League last season. And, you know, we scored, 3 against Villa, 3 against Everton in the closing stages of that season. And if we hadn't racked those 6 goals up, it would have been down in the bottom 3 in terms of goals for. And I know that doesn't tell you everything, but it tells you something. And we need to improve the amount of goals that we're scoring. So that's something that we're going to need to look out for. I think Lefebvre playing centrally is actually pretty critical to that. And obviously we'll likely see some attacking reinforcements come in over the next week or two. In terms of being a crossroads, I think it's massive. I think it's a massive season for us. There was an article in the Independent that Mark Douglas had written that came out yesterday or the day before. And he'd said something along the lines of Sunderland's aspiration is to finish regularly in European positions. So that's the aspiration behind the scenes. That's what the club is gearing up to. That's what the club wants to achieve.
But which competition?
Well, whichever it is, it gives you a sense of the league position, doesn't it? So it gives you a sense that the club is targeting the top third of the Premier League position rather than a mid-table. So you've got the aspiration there. I think if we can, do relatively well in Europe, if we can finish the league in a Europa League spot for next season, we keep hold of the players who we want to keep hold of in the main. There might be one or two who we decide to cash in on. They've got higher aspirations, Champions League, etc. But I think unless we want to have a massive turnover of squad next summer, we need to have European football again next season. So from that perspective, and we've talked all about continuity in the dugout, continuity in the playing staff's important as well.
Yeah.
And from that respect, it is quite a pivotal season for us.
Yeah. Well, we're a little pushed for time, so I'm going to end with this in terms of dealing with how Sunderland might do. I'm not going to ask for a league position. I'm going to start with you, Gav. Going to put everything into the mix because obviously we've got expectations from fans. We've got expectations of the club, as Martin's just said. But I'm going to ask you to kind of put it into 3 categories. Tell us what a good season looks like for Sunderland. Tell us what par is for Sunderland this season. And tell us what you think would be a poor season for Sunderland coming up.
Good season would be top 10. I just think, the Spurs are not going to finish in the bottom half again. So there's one extra team you're going to get in the top half. I think if you don't get Europe, 8th, 9th, 10th isn't a bad finish. So yeah, I would say top 10 would be a good season. Par would be between 11th.
Sorry, just before you get on, Paul, just to chuck in that good season, would that include a cup run?
Yes,
Or would,
I think so.
or would you not be fussed if we finished in that top half?
Well, this is the thing, right? So if we do, we're going to try and win a cup. We've got to, right? Whether we do or not, is a total different thing. But if we somehow won a cup, if we won the Europa League or the League Cup, then I think, if we finished even lower than 10th, we wouldn't really care, would we? So it's a good, I mean, trying to think roundly, I think a good season would be a top 10 finish and a really strong cup run. A par would be anywhere from sort of 11th down to 14th, where we don't struggle. We're not in the relegation mix. Maybe still have some good cup runs. Might not necessarily win anything. We don't get the quarters, semis of the Europa League somehow. Memorable season, latter stages of a domestic cup, but finish in the middle somewhere. I think that
Good
would
night
still
out.
be fine. I think most people. Yeah. Well, that's the main thing, isn't it? And obviously, poor would be a relegation battle, which is what everybody, apart from Sunderland fans, seems to be predicting. So, I mean, one thing I will say about when it comes to predictions and all that, when you see all of these outsiders predicting Sunderland to go down or to struggle, I think they're missing so much context. Maybe this podcast we've done today will help provide other people outside of Sunderland with that context that you're not maybe getting from pundits who just see the name Sunderland. See, we haven't bought a lot of players and go, well, they're going to struggle. They've got Europe, and everyone thought they were going to struggle last year. So there is a lot of context where that's maybe missing with some of the punditry. I think the continuity that we've got is what will stop us from relegation battles and struggle. I think we've just got that. We've got too many good leaders. We've got too many good people. There's nothing about Sunderland that makes me think there's a bad apple there. We're gonna have a discontent. We're gonna struggle. We've recruited really good people, and when the adversity comes, they're the people that you're looking to pull you through it. And I just don't think, touch wood, I don't think we've got bad eggs, which is what struggling teams have. So yeah, that would be my kind of layer. That again, probably pointing out the obvious, but I would say that's my good, middle, and bad.
Yeah, Martin, Gav's gone through a lot of different scenarios there in terms of putting them into those buckets. But what would you say about, when you add in the fact that expectations might be high after last season?
I think if you look back at the teams that we talked about in terms of who can be in the top 4 or 5, as it turned out, Arsenal, Manchester United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, Man City, chuck Villa in there as well. That's 7 teams. So the reality is we're going to have a hell of a good season to equal what we did this last season. The other thing I throw into the mix, which I think it's really difficult to look at things in isolation. So you go, well, a good league position, where would you be happy? Well, I'd be happy top 10. I'd be really happy. I think if we finish 10th, I'd be chuffed. If we get caught into a relegation battle come March, April, I think we've let ourselves down. I'd be very, very disappointed in that. Everything else is caveated by anything in the cups, because I don't know how you two feel about this, but I would rather, say if we could sit here and go, we'll write the season, this will all happen. I would be quite happy, not being in a relegation battle to any great extent, but finish 15th and win the FA Cup.
Oh, yeah.
I'd
absolutely
take that every day of the week, because, what are we doing if we don't want to see our team lift a trophy?
Yeah.
So, we are going to be competing on 4 fronts throughout the course of the season. It is going to be challenging in terms of the game. But as you know, as Gav said, the mentality at the club is every single thing that we want to go into, we will want to win. You saw how Xhaka was holding up that bloody lump of coal the other day, man. Like he was chuffed he'd win it. So we've got that mentality in the squad. And I just think that the stability that we have, and hopefully that stability stands us in very good stead and is still there this time next year, because that's what we've missed. As a football club, that's what we've missed for far too long. And we are just seeing the benefits of having that stability right now. So, look, I think we've got a brilliant group of players, a great bunch of people on the football side behind the scenes anyway. I think people know what to do and they're adding to the coaching squad. And you know, as we talked about, I remember saying last season, the really promising thing for me for Sunderland is that when we were watching the team last season, you could see where the obvious thing was to improve, and that was set pieces. Because if you can add, you know, as I said there, we were fourth lowest goal scorers in the Premier League. If you can add 6 or 7 or 8 goals throughout the course of the season from set pieces, which we should be more than capable of doing with a good set piece setup, then that can add a number of more points throughout the course of the season, can't it? Overlay the experience that the players have, the additional signings that we will make undoubtedly before the end of the summer. I think Metali's a great sign by the looks of things. He's a really exciting one. From the perspective as well that we don't expect him to come in and hit the ground running. He can learn alongside Reynaldo for a season or even 18 months, can't he? He can come in, play his fair share of games. But we're not saying you come in, we're going to be relying on you 50 games this season, because that probably wouldn't be that attractive to a 20-year-old. So, look, I think it's a season of massive possibility for us. And I think we'll go some way to realising the potential that this group of players has.
Yeah, well, I think yous have obviously been Sunderland fans a little bit longer than I have, so this might not apply, but you know,
all right,
nice.
When are you young?
You know, experience and wise and all that. But I don't think there's been a better opportunity in my lifetime to go and win a cup than this season. We've got one extra competition for starters, and we've just got the squad to do it. We've got and I don't get any hint that this regime underestimates that opportunity. I think they're so ready to go and win something. So that's why I'm optimistic in that front.
I agree. Just chuck my 2 pence in that with the cups, that I really don't want everyone to get hung up on cups and cup kind of success this season. So I just think how we do in the Premier League is imperative to the next 5 to 10 years, the next decade, and potentially winning trophies year after year, which I'm hoping we might do at some point. But if we you know, don't lose focus of our league form this season and don't get dragged into something stupid, because I think, as everyone's seen with Spurs, sometimes you're not planning on it, but it's very easy to do. Just on being old, Martin, you talked about Xhaka lifting up that lump of coal, and my dad used to say he was exactly the same on Christmas Day back in the day when he was a young'un. But anyway, we've talked for far too long, as usual, and we've gone over our allotted time that we planned, as per usual. So just leaving to say thank you very much to Gav and Martin. Thank you very much, as always, and thank you for basically putting yourselves on the line to be clipped next summer when all 3 promoted clubs stay up and everybody uses that as fuel along with all the other predictions. But thanks again, everyone, for listening. As always, we'll be with you every day, as the 3 of us are, fortunately for you lot, mad enough to produce the only daily Sunderland podcast. Not that I know a daily podcast for any other club, to be fair, but that means we'll have an opposition preview leading up to the Ipswich game, of course, as well as our own preview as usual. So we'll have every angle covered ahead of the weekend. So look out for all of that. But from us, it's bye for now.